I'm Hisnara, the editor and owner of CheekyLittleCareers.com. Welcome to this short video for which I will be interviewing a partner at Sullivan Cromwell called Ben Perry, who is a very long time contact of mine. So very much looking forward to chatting to him. I've been joined for this interview by three aspiring solicitors who will help me come up with some questions for Ben. So hopefully we'll be putting him through his paces and you'll be able to gain a real insight into what a training contract would be like at Sullivan and Cromwell. So let me start by getting the students to say hello and to introduce themselves quickly. So Z, why don't you go first?
Hi everyone, my name is Z, and I'm a penultimate year law student at Queen Mary, University of London, interested in everything legal tech and obviously corporate law.
Thank you very much. Saaniya, how about you?
Hi, my name is Saaniya, and I'm nearing the end of my first year in the LLB program at King's College. I also have a past bachelor's degree in politics and psychology from the University of British Columbia in Vancouver. Currently, I am an intern with the Green Enterprise Institute, which is a student-led nonprofit.
And Noor, how about you?
Hi everyone, my name is Noor. I'm a first-year law student at the University of Birmingham. I'm originally from Cyprus. I intend to become a dual qualified lawyer, and I have an interest in commercial law.
Ben, how about you?
Hi, Hisnara. Nice to be working with you again, and nice to meet everyone else for the first time. My name's Ben Perry. I'm a partner at the London office of Sullivan Cromwell. I've been with the firm now for almost 22 years this year, first as an associate and for the last 14 years as a partner. My practice is centered around cross-border mergers and acquisitions, and I also run the trainee program at the firm, serving both as graduate recruitment partner and as a training principal. And I've done so since we launched our trainee program just over 10 years ago.
How does Sullivan Cromwell differentiate itself from other New York headquartered firms in London?
Thank you, Z. That's a very good question. I think it's necessary to first just focus on what we do and what other similarly situated firms in London do. So the first thing to mention is actually that the office we have in London is a very long-standing one. It's actually the 50th anniversary this year, 2022, of the founding of the office. And what we do in London and across Europe is really focused on transactional work. So that's around four main transactional practice areas of mergers and acquisitions, capital markets, leverage finance, and restructuring and project finance. And accompanying those are antitrust and tax practices. So we don't, for example, have a contentious civil litigation practice in London. There are other firms which do. So from the perspective of someone who's looking at firms in London, I think the first port of call for anybody in that position is to look at what kind of work the firm does and how that aligns with your interest. The second thing I would mention is that in our office, where it's roughly 50% English qualified lawyers or people training to be English qualified lawyers, and 50% US qualified lawyers who have either been in the office for a long time or have come over on secondment, that actually brings a lot of good opportunities for someone who's coming in as a trainee, because we regularly work on combined teams, and that really gives a breadth of different experience that I think it's difficult to replicate elsewhere. And then thirdly, when it comes to the trainee experience itself, obviously, I think one of the things that can affect that most is actually the size of the office as well. So our office is around 80 lawyers and trainees, and I think one of the key factors there is that if you come to be a trainee with us, you will get real hands-on experience from the beginning. There are now other, over the last 20 years, over the course of my career, since I joined S&C, I've seen some of the other US firms, grow to be several hundred lawyers in London, which when I started my career, that was the size of the biggest English firms' London offices. So that's a different environment. And, I think it's important if you're looking at a firm like ours, to be comfortable with the idea of a small trainee intake and to be able to take the opportunities that delivers.
Wondering if you could talk the viewers through how your training contract is structured.
One thing we do slightly differently is in the past, we have split the second year of the training contract actually into 3. So in total, there are 5 seats in the training contract, 2 of around 6 months in the first year and 3 of around 4 months in the second year. And the purpose of doing that was to allow people to gain as wide an experience as possible within our core practice areas, while also accommodating 1 or more secondments during the second year.
I want to know, what does it take to be a successful trainee at S&C? I mean, are there any common attributes that jump to you?
You have to be very motivated and be what one might call a self-starter, because that's, there can be situations and different environments where in some places sort of the training contract is sometimes an extension of can be seen as an extension of full-time study, whereas actually it's not. And it's about getting to grips with the working environment, getting your arms around what you're working on, and being able to successfully transition from full-time study to full-time work and make a significant contribution. So, self-starting is one aspect of it. I think the other key aspect is what I might call intellectual curiosity. You, particularly in the early stages of your career, you're developing both your knowledge and your skills. For the first part, what you're working in will not, for the most part, be areas that you have studied in great depth. So there's a lot of information to take in and and assimilate. And the second and most important thing is actually, it's about becoming, more proficient in the day-to-day, the day-to-day skills and the day-to-day requirements of a job like this.
What strikes you as being the key sort of events that are going on at the moment that are keeping your clients awake at night?
Three of the broader themes that are emerging at the moment, and which I think will be a feature of the environment for transactional work over the coming months. The first one is actually just the financial health of some businesses. What we've seen sort of during the pandemic, and really this is both in the UK and in other countries, you've seen an unprecedented level of government support go into private industry for the purposes of keeping companies and the broader economy moving, and during the pandemic and during the period of uncertainty. That government support now for the most part has either ended or is ending. So, when for a business, the most fundamental concern of the management will be the financial health of that business, and then there are likely to be companies who start to get into financial difficulty, and in a restructuring practice, that's one of the areas where when people get into that zone of financial difficulty, where restructuring lawyers can become very involved in helping either companies or their creditors work out what the next steps are. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing related to that is actually what we're seeing more broadly with both rising inflation now at record levels in the UK, and also potentially the knock-on impact on interest rates. So again, in a business context, and I think almost every business is that relies on supplies or raw materials is seeing or commodities is seeing the price of those increase and is facing a dilemma about the extent to which they're able to pass that on to their own customers and what the impact will be on their profitability if they don't. There are also particular businesses that may, for example, be affected by the situation in Ukraine because they relied on particular raw materials or commodities that come from that region, and where there isn't an obvious an obvious replacement source. And then the third thing really is just the some of the volatility in the stock markets. We've seen so far this year we've seen some of the major markets are down on what admittedly were record years last year, but that the level of market confidence that investors have in a company frequently can impact on the company's ability to execute on and deliver on its strategic objectives, because ultimately the board and management will need the support of their investors to be able to do that, and they'll want the measures, the things that the deals, the initiatives, the strategies that they're thinking about to be well received by the markets. And in recent months, we've seen a number of companies with pressure on their share price. We've also seen a growing trend, I think, particularly in the UK and Europe, of activist investors coming in to try and to take stakes and try and influence the strategy of boards and management as well.
SNC are really well known for M&A. So just last year in 2021, the firm advised on global M&A deals totaling up to $660 billion worldwide, which means you get to work on really interesting and complex deals. Can you share with us some recent deal highlights that you've been on?
The figure of deals that you described was enough to make us the #1 firm in the league tables, the global league tables for M&A last year. Rather than picking out specific transactions, what I'm going to do is talk about a number of the different types of things that I've been working on. The first one is what are called public to private transactions, and that's when a group of financial investors acquires a public company, one that's listed on the stock market. They make an offer for the shares of that company. Once the transaction closes, the company is a private company, no longer on the stock market, and they've proved to be increasingly popular in recent years because investors are able to get a good price for their shares, and the management teams and the new owners often find it easier and more attractive to implement new initiatives or changes to the company's business when it's not listed on the public market. So in the last 18 months, I've worked on 2 of those transactions for one of my clients. One was the take private of a UK company that actually owns and provides smart meters. So smart meters for gas and electricity, a very topical area at the moment, and that's obviously an area of business which has been booming. The other one, so that was a UK transaction. The other transaction was actually in Scandinavia, and it was again a take private, this time of a Finnish company that was listed in Sweden. And again, in looking at sort of broader environmental objectives and reducing the disruption from construction, that company makes and sells adaptable buildings. So what's previously sort of been, temporary accommodation or offices, but now people are increasingly turning to those kinds of products because they're much more environmentally sustainable and they don't involve the cost and disruption of construction of a permanent building. So in both of those cases, the transactions were executed successfully, and all of the parties were very happy with good outcomes.
What would a typical trainee task be on a take private deal?
Firstly, a deal like that where companies in the public markets, you're not just operating in terms of a contractual environment between the parties, you're operating under takeover and listed company regulation, and that brings with it a lot of formal requirements in terms of announcements and documents and what they have to have in them. So a trainee would be involved in helping to, as part of a broader team, helping to prepare all of those documents. You can also have situations, and the smart meter deal that I mentioned actually had a group of investors who came together to work on that deal. So you can be working on the arrangements between the investors who've all come together. You could also be involved actually on a completely different aspect of those deals, working on the financing, because there's frequently the financial investors are also raising money from banks or through bonds for the purposes of funding both the acquisition and the ongoing requirements of the business going forward. You could also be involved in in an antitrust seat in the antitrust or foreign investment filings that are necessary for the deal. So actually, I think if there's one thing to take away, working on a deal like that doesn't just have to be on the M&A aspects. There are also lots of other different places where broader teams within the firm will get involved, and trainees on those teams will get involved as well.
Transactional law involves work that's very interesting, and I'd like to know, at what point in your career did you decide you wanted to focus on transactional law?
Actually, before I even started as a trainee.
Wow.
That was always what was most attractive and exciting to me. I found during my university career, there was always a lot of exposure to sort of litigation mainly through the prism of barristers who came and talked about their work. And I can honestly say that never really appealed to me. And I had actually spent a bit of time doing work experience in a commercial solicitors firm in the town in which I grew up before I had gone to university. So everything that I saw at that stage actually only reinforced that. And then when I got into my training contract, I think all but the last few months was in transactional work. So I'd already made that decision before I walked in the door for my first day. Albeit, as I said, I don't think people realistically are in a position to think about specific practice areas until you've actually had the chance to try it.
So in May, the Queen's speech has set out a series of new laws, and a lot of them are Brexit related. So I just want to ask Ben, which one interests you the most and why?
The government has made clear their intention that UK law will now diverge from EU law in a number of areas, and I think the one that's particularly relevant to transactional practice is the regulation of financial services, and that could affect the banking industry, the insurance industry, the asset management industry, all of which are key contributors to the UK economy. At the moment, we really have had a position where, under the legislation implementing Brexit, EU law, as it was in force on the day on which the UK withdrew, the withdrawal became effective, and the end of the transitional period, that was enshrined into UK law as something called retained EU law. But obviously, the UK Parliament now has the power to legislate to change that, and so that's what we're likely to be seeing come in. And I think it's important for people in your position to be aware of that, because what happens next and how extensive those changes are could well, sort of help define people's careers and what they're doing as those developments take hold over the next several years.
If you had one final piece of advice that you could leave us with, what would that be?
I think it's a sort of very simple piece of advice, which is do your homework and ask questions. And I think by participating in today's session, you guys have shown that you're already fulfilling both of those objectives.
Ben, thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us. And as ever, it's been super, super insightful. And I'm sure everyone watching this will find it very helpful, particularly to find out not just about your firm and what it's like to be a trainee with your London office, but also just to get a better understanding of what work lawyers actually do, particularly those specialising in transactional work. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for watching.